Madam President, India would like to congratulate Slovenia for assuming the Council's presidency and thank them for convening today's open debate. I also thank His Excellency Ban Ki-moon, the former UN Secretary General, for his insightful briefing as also the external briefer for her remarks. The theme of today's open debate, leadership for peace, and the guiding questions are particularly pertinent in the current context. The establishment of the United Nations was rooted in the desire of member states to achieve sustainable peace. Consequently, maintenance of international peace and security became its central pillar, and the United Nations Security Council was primarily entrusted with this onerous task. Inability of the Council to purposefully intervene in today's raging conflicts in different regions has deeply disappointed our citizens, who question UN's legitimacy, efficacy, credibility, and relevance. The next Secretary General would therefore assume charge at a critical juncture for this organization. In this backdrop, India would like to make the following points. First, the primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security rests with the Council and its membership, especially the permanent members who have been continuously represented over the past 8 decades in the Council. When their approaches were focused on global public goods, the chances of peace prevailing have brightened. When their approaches focused on narrower national interest, chances of peace have dimmed. The quality and focus of the leadership displayed by members of the Council thus represents the most important aspect, impinging on maintenance of international peace and security. Second, structural and systemic elements in the 8-decade-old architecture of the Council act as retardants in efforts to maintain international peace and security. The current Security Council configuration is largely frozen in time. As Secretary General Guterres noted, and I quote, "We can't create a future fit for our grandchildren with systems built for our grandparents." Reforming the Security Council to make it fit for purpose to tackle contemporary challenges is an urgent global imperative. The intergovernmental negotiations framework launched for Council reform, which has largely remained barren and bereft of productive outcomes, must move towards time-bound, text-based negotiations at the earliest, to enhance representation from underrepresented and unrepresented geographies in tune with today's realities in both the permanent and elected categories of membership. Third, leadership for peace should be the guiding mantra for the ongoing UN 80 reforms initiative to enhance efficiency, effectiveness, and relevance of the UN and multilateral system. This is not a one-shot process, but a continuing effort that would pass on to the new Secretary General, who would be called upon not only to address present challenges, but also to reinvigorate multilateralism. Fourth, the new Secretary General must embody the aspirations of the overwhelming majority of humanity, who are from developing countries of the global south. These aspirations largely cover the development spectrum and pertain to ensuring the basic minimum of living standards, and cover areas such as financing for development, climate equity and justice, achieving SDGs, overseas development assistance, etc. Fifth, leadership by definition must be inclusive for it to be representative, legitimate, and effective. Appointments of senior UN leadership must follow a transparent and objective process rather than a division of spoils approach. No post should become the exclusive and continuing preserve of some member states. Sixth, India takes note of the recent efforts by the large majority of member states to bring in greater transparency and predictability in the election process of UN Secretary General, as also evidenced in the negotiations on UN General Assembly Resolution 79/327. Madam President, before I conclude, I refer to the statement made by the representative of Pakistan today. India would like to reiterate that the Union territories of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh are an integral and inalienable part of India. They were, are, and will always remain so. Pakistan's unwarranted reference to Jammu and Kashmir in today's open debate attests to its obsessive focus on harming India and its people. A serving non-permanent Security Council member that chooses to further this obsession in all meetings and platforms of the UN in pursuit of its divisive agenda cannot be expected to fulfill its designated responsibilities and obligations. India had entered into the Indus Waters Treaty 65 years ago in good faith, in a spirit of goodwill and friendship. Throughout these 6.5 decades, Pakistan has violated the spirit of the treaty by inflicting 3 wars and thousands of terror attacks on India. In the last 4 decades, tens of thousands of Indian lives have been lost in Pakistan-sponsored terror attacks, the most recent of which was a Pahalgam terror attack in April 2025, which involved religion-based targeted killings of 26 innocent civilians by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists. It is in this backdrop that India has finally announced that the treaty will be held in abeyance until Pakistan, which is a global epicenter of terror, credibly and irrevocably ends its support for cross-border and all other forms of terrorism. Pakistan, of course, has a unique way of respecting the will of its people by jailing a prime minister, by banning the ruling political party, and by letting its armed forces engineer a constitutional coup through the 27th Amendment and giving lifetime immunity to its Chief of Defense Forces. Let me be clear. India will counter Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in all its forms and manifestations with all its might. Madam President, in closing, with abiding faith in multilateralism, India reiterates that we stand ready to contribute towards working for peace, security, and prosperity for all. I thank you, Madam President.